not there at the very end when these kids are in need to get that last little bit of help they need in summer school for $45,000. Here you are talking about millions of dollars that were put in the wrong fund, but for $45,000, you're letting all these grades in high school go without getting any help. Now, I brought the attention to Dr. Thornton, and he knows I brought the attention to the fact that one of the subjects in high school was not being performed to the greatest. I asked for an investigation done with 3 classes that were brought up to me that most of the kids in the classes were failing in those 3 different classes. And this person really is going to be the 4th class because I just got this letter. And when they found out and went back and looked, this one subject, this one teacher, actually was failing the majority of her students this year and also the majority of students last year. To me, how can we have a teacher that's not performing to the best of their ability for our students? And how can 3 classes be failing and then that person gets paid every week for teaching, but yet nobody else is there? Where's the other people that when students are going up to guidance counselors or to maybe an administrator and telling, we got a problem, I need help, my whole class is failing, and there's nobody there to say, oh, no, well, too bad, we're this supposed to get help. For $45,000, these kids are not going to get help this summer? And why, in the 3rd quarter, you decide to say, no summer school this year? Now, if you came out and said, no summer school next year, okay, I have no problem with that. Okay, I have no problem with that at all. But in the 3rd quarter, I have parents calling up, kids are all upset, they're going to have to find their own way to get help now because the school don't have $45,000 to help educate these kids. I have a big problem with that.
So to your second point, it's really a personnel matter. I can't speak to what we're doing about that, but I can tell you we're taking it very seriously. In terms of summer school, I agree with you. We want to service our students. The painful truth here is we're asking for $7.7 million, and summer school is not part of that list. We had to make some very difficult choices, and we'd love to put it in fully, but right now we're at 7.7 without it.
I just think it's wrong when you say 7.7 million, but our kids' future, those kids, that's going to affect their grades. That's going to affect them going into school next year. The juniors now, they're going to be going up, they're going to be facing enough hard time, now they're going to be facing an even worse time. I think that's totally crazy. And I know one thing that wasn't brought up because it's not in the budget, and I know they got a lot of publicity about the lunches, and I see Mr. Pender here, and I want to thank him personally for his effort. I want to bring up another letter that this is pathetic. Pathetic is the nice way of putting it, okay? We know all about the lunches, about who didn't pay, what didn't pay. Well, I have a young man whose mother passed away on Mother's Day, okay? And I'm not using names, so all right. On May 15th, Mother's Day was May 12th, on May 15th, the young man signed a certified letter. Now, I'm not even criticizing the administration. Maybe they did not put down that mother was deceased. All right, 3 days went by, that's fine. That's not my problem with the letter. The letter states, dear parent or guardian, you're, I guess, behind on lunch money. Please contact, now the letter was written May 15th. Please contact us by February 20th, 2019. And if not, further action will be taken on April 2019. How did that letter go out, Mr. Ferrucci? Your name was on it. A letter like that was sent out. Doesn't anybody read? When you have a plan, we've got it at work. We have a letter on our computer. We change dates. We change information. That letter went out 3 days after that boy's mother died, and the wrong dates are on it, and it was certified mail. Maybe we should take the postage from the mailing and put it back in the summer school, and maybe we can get our kids educated.
Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask the following questions a little. I know you're not prepared for them, so I understand if you don't know the answers. I completely understand. But one of the things that came up as you were doing your presentation, Mr. Ferrucci, and Superintendent, you're welcome to answer it as well. What percentage of this budget would you say has to, funds that are from unfunded federal and state mandates? What I mean by that is laws that are implemented where they say you must do it to every municipality in the state, and we have to fund it. On top, like there's federal mandates, state mandates. Do you have an idea or a guesstimate of what percentage that would be?
I don't have a percent, but there are many mandates that
Many.
we deal with on a regular basis. If you want, tomorrow we can give you a full list.
That would be great, and I would thank you for that. And the reason why I ask is I think that one of them, something that is never spoke of, is the amount, Mr. President, of federal and state laws and rules and changes that come down where they say you must implement it or be fined, but then somehow the municipalities, including the cities and the school department, have to come up with that money. So I see the follow-up to that is the iReady Math. Is that a district program or is that a state program?
It's a district program. The short answer here is our math program, K-12, is not where it needs to be. This is a major overhaul of our math curriculum. Just a quick soundbite on that. We have the Common Core now in our state, as you know. And in Warwick, we have had a curriculum that has not cut it at all. A national organization has red curriculums, either green, yellow, or red. We've had a red curriculum in Warwick for years. So this iReady program is part of the overhaul of the math curriculum.
Is this a Common Core or is Common Core being put away?
No, it's Common Core. It's both a workbook and also a web-based approach for the students.
Okay, so a follow-up question to that. Now, let's say the park testing, when we had to implement the park testing, or before that, the kneecap testing, and before that, I forget the other testing.
The NSRE.
I'm sorry, say again?
The NSRE, I believe, before
Thank you. Was there a cost to the municipality to do those testing? Was that completely funded by the state?
I don't recall a cost for the district for state testing.
Okay. No cost for the, okay, okay, thank you. And so my second part is when a school gets a student, what is the, all right, so here's what I'm trying, when a student goes to a district or goes to outplacement and that student leaves the outplacement, there's a term that the money follows the child. What is the date that the district keeps the money and they can still send the student back to their home district?
We've worked on a quarterly basis with receiving and sending districts. There's one school that actually gets it down to the daily rate, but most of the districts accept the quarterly assessment. The allocation of state aid stays constant for the whole year. So if there's a record of the state aid going to a community for a student, but they've been embedding that in our payment processes now, other than charter schools. So once they get a firm number, they'll keep the state aid portion, they just won't receive the local contributions.
So if a charter school accepts a student to their school,
Yes.
that we as a municipality, the school department, is responsible for paying for that child's tuition to the charter school. The charter school can then say, we don't like this kid, send him back, and they keep the money.
They'll keep the portion from the state because they don't take that student off their calculations on the state aid level. But the school department would stop paying them the in-district portion to that community. And that cutoff typically, like I said, is a quarterly basis.
But if they keep the state money, does the state reimburse you for taking that child back, let's say, in November?
No, their perspective is you're not paying the tuition out of your local contribution, so you have those dollars, and then we'll pick that student up the following year in our student count for state aid.
So I guess the big question is, does it ever break even? Or is there an additional cost for a student kickback to us?
No, actually it does break even because if that student came back and all of a sudden another student left in October, they'll wash themselves out. So I don't see that as a huge issue to the community. It's pretty stable. We'll have 4 or 5 one way or the other. So if somebody moved here and then they started school in October, November, and then they joined a charter school, we would not be losing state aid on that person to go at that point.
Okay, so you're saying, so if a student, let's say, goes to Davies, a state school, a state-run school, and they get sent back to Warwick in November,
We would lose their portion of the state aid for that school year, yes.
no student goes to Davies in the middle of the year, because Davies is
No,
a
not-
vocational.
Correct.
So therefore, we would have to pick up that additional cost.
We would lose that opportunity for revenue, yes.
Okay.
And the debate that really comes up is variable student costs versus fixed costs, and I think the superintendent went down this path. I'm a huge advocate that money should follow the child, but it's the incremental cost to have the child either join your school or leave your school is where we really should be having this conversation. Because if we've got a classroom with 25, and I think I've done this before chart-wise, where we showed that we took 1 or 2 students from each one of our schools, and maybe 8 at each one of our high schools, there's our 90 students that leave, but I don't get a high enough concentration to even lay off a teacher. They go from 24 students down to 21. Well, I still got to pay for the teacher, I still got to pay for the classroom. So what's the incremental cost? It's the per pupil for the software program that we run, the library access, and those kinds of things. In the elementary school, it might be crayons and paper. So our incremental cost per child is only about $3,000 a year. That's where the conversation really should be had. Not that the whole $18,000 goes with the child. Well, they've got a classroom with 20 kids in it, and they're going to put 21 into that teacher's classroom, and that district is now going to get $18,000 to cost them $3,000 to have a student in their classroom. That's where I think it's really inequitable.
So, to go back to my first question, unfunded mandates, Superintendent, would you feel safe, I understand you have a list, you're going to get it to me, would you feel safe for the under-over is about 30 to 40%?
I don't even want to guess.
Okay.
But I would tell you, it seems like oftentimes we're talking about another unfunded mandate. But tomorrow I'll have that list for you.
All right, thank you very much. So, Mr. President, what I wanted to do is just bring up some of the additional costs and burdens that a municipality faces that are decisions made at the state and federal level, and the decisions are made every day, and they're just kicked down to us, and somehow the school department and this council, we have to make those decisions as a municipality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman McAllister.
Thank you very much. I just want to speak on a few things here tonight about how, we really need to work on our communication between the city council, the school committee, and everybody, because we all have family in our schools, we all have constituents in our schools, and we all want the best that we can provide, and that is what everybody up here is advocating for, and that's what everybody is advocating for on the school committee as well. But you have to understand that comes along is that we want to be able to work together and to trust that what we're hearing is the actual numbers, because we all just want to tackle this and move forward. Last year, Councilman Ricks asked, what's the drop dead number? He wanted to work, we wanted to work with you. What's the drop dead number that you need that we can do legally without, mandated by the charter? What can we do? And the number was $8 million, 8 and change. And that had to have $8 million. Then throughout the year, that number keeps dropping. It goes to $6 million, $5.5 million, $4 million, etc. During this time, a Accrual Act was filed, and then it was withdrawn. Then we entered the mediation. And it was found at the end of mediation that the actual number was 0. That it was properly funded. Now, whether properly funded because we got to take from here or there, but the number was there. So when we're coming here today and asking for a $7.1 million increase, that's why we have some concerns. At least that's why I have some concerns. But I think we need to kind of change the tune a little bit, and we got to tackle these issues. Again, we can't have children getting sick in the schools because the custodians aren't there to clean the stuff. So we need to work together. I think one of the things that hasn't been touched on tonight that is actually in the mayor's budget is the mayor included in his budget $1.7 million taking over the debt service for the school department. Now, you did not even put that in your budget here tonight. However, technically, the city does not have to pick up that money. That when the contract was made, when the school department borrowed that money, that part of the contract was that they were to pick up the debt service, which this year is $1.7 million. So I think we should take that as an olive branch. That's one thing right there that you didn't even have to include that. I mean, maybe you should have, but you didn't include that in your budget for the $1.7 million, because that's an offer that's in the mayor's budget that's why we're here tonight to talk about. So I want to see that as an olive branch. That's one of the first things that we need to do. I think we got to work on our communication so, these issues don't boil up. I know members on this council, they sat in hours and hours on these mediations. They talked hours and hours, meeting with the lawyers when the Cruel Act was filed. The mayor's office worked on that. The school department worked on that. The school committee. And, people are putting their best foot forward. They win in these things because we all have the same goal, and that is to provide the best education and the health and the safety of our students, our teachers, and our parents that are in the schools. So there is no easy answers to this, but I think that we need to just remember that, okay, we see what happens, all these different things, and it took a long way to get down to that number, but here we are again, that we need to properly fund the schools. We understand that, and we're going to debate on how to do that and what the numbers are, but we need to remember that we are all here for the same goal and that we want the same thing, and that's the best education that our schools can provide. Thank you.
Councilman Sinapi.
Two quick things. One, first, I may have misspoke regarding the salaries for Cranston. They actually pay about $500,000 more. I think I said it was the opposite. And on the notion of communication, and also to add to that transparency, one thing that might help everybody, help the school committee, help the school department, and help the council, take a look at how Cranston presents their budget. It's about 117 pages, and it breaks it down far more than the one presented to us. Gives you a much better idea of what costs what and why it costs what. Because I watched the school committee on at least 2 of the 3 days, or it might have been more than that, but at least 2 of the days where they went line by line through the budget, and they had a lot of great questions. And it was hard to get answers just simply because of the vast scope of what we were talking about, or what they were talking about rather. And having a budget laid out like Cranston does will make that easier for everybody. And that way when you're standing here, you're not questioning on every little thing because it'll be before us. And you won't have to sit there flipping through things because we'll have it, be ready to go, and you'll have it. It'll be ready to go. And it'll make it better for us, and it'll make it better for the taxpayers for the purposes of transparency. So, just an idea.
Thank you. Any other council members, questions? Before we open it up to public comment, yes, the school committee chair. If you could speak into the mic, sorry about that, and you have to hold it close, otherwise we can't hear you.
Good evening, Council President Marola, members of the council, colleagues, and taxpayers. I come to you this evening to speak on a few things. I'd like to clarify a few items for people. First of all, mediation did not find that Warwick Public Schools are properly funded. The decision that was made by the mediator was that the city does not have to pay us any additional monies, that we were to take that money out of the pension fund. And we found out after the fact that that was completely illegal and that we would be heavily fined, severely fined if we did. As for the pension, my predecessor, during her more than 6 years as chair, more than 6 years as chair, there was 1 year that she wasn't chair. Another individual was, and that individual is also guilty of this. They never attended a single pension meeting. It is a verified fact. One of my colleagues went through every single set of minutes for meetings going back to 2009. before my time. When I inquired a number of times, when I was newly on the committee, and even later on, when I inquired about the pension and how it worked and how it ran and what kind of money was going in there and things like that, and I didn't go to Mr. Ferrucci. I went to my colleague, who was the chair, and I went to, at that time, the person who was in charge of HR. I was rebuffed. I was told that basically it wasn't my business. I couldn't get the information. Warwick versus Cranston. We just discovered that Cranston actually pays their employees more, and they have more employees now, so that makes sense. But I just want you to know that our employees are paid more, probably per person at top step, than Cranston. And in addition to that, we pay FICA, Social Security. Cranston does not pay into FICA for their employees. As far as the buses, we pay a lot more for the buses. We got rid of our own busing services. It's one of the reasons that I ran for the school committee, because I don't think that subcontracting works well after a certain amount of time. And things end up costing us a lot more in the long run. It's a short-run help, but it doesn't weigh out well in the end. And the money doesn't stay local, which is a whole nother issue. But it doesn't stay local. The majority of the money goes to the company that gets the bid, and then the workers, whether they be bus drivers or cooks or whatever, workers' comp workers, they get less. And people inside lose their jobs. But be that as it may, we run more buses, and Cranston runs far less buses because they don't have the same dynamics that we have as far as the city of Cranston. And they're also still running their own buses. They do it in-house. As for the pension, I didn't vote for it. Neither did any of these people, any of my colleagues from the committee. They didn't vote for it. But we're stuck with it. We're all stuck with it. And I don't think any of us would have voted for it. We just brought the ask down. We just brought the input down to just over $1 million. So I have to ask you to please work with us, because we can't take that money back. Like I said, it's illegal. It's impossible to take that money out of there. It's not overfunded. The pension is not overfunded. No pension is overfunded unless it's over 100%. And I did not agree that night. And I will never agree to tampering with people's pensions, because I am a victim of that, because of what Governor Raimondo did to teachers and state employees. She didn't touch municipalities. But there are those of you on this council that were affected by what Governor Raimondo did and how she lied about things. In addition, my father worked for Almax for over 40 years. And when Almax, when it started getting bought out by various entities, those various entities raided the pension fund. They stole the entire pension fund. and those people who had worked for many, many years. Probably people here in the audience probably remember Almax when it was run by the original family, and it was a great company. It was a great company. But in latter years, it was completely raided. And none of us wants to do that to our employees. None of us wants to see a Central Falls or situations like that. Going forward, this committee, this current committee, the 5 of us, we can only do better, and we've already started. We've started this process. We are making people accountable. We are asking questions and getting answers, unlike when I was there previously. I'd ask questions, and I'd get laughed at sometimes. I'd get rebuffed. I'd get disrespected. That's how it goes. I worked for the state for 28 years. I'm used to it. I did an important job, and I believed in what I was doing, and that's why I continued to do it. In January 8th of this year, you all were inaugurated along with the new members of the school committee and our new mayor. At that time, Mayor Solomon cited the relationship between the city and the schools has often been tumultuous. I would agree with that. I would ask why. What happened and when did it happen? Where do we go to change that? How do we change that? Because God knows we need to. Furthermore, he said, but in recognizing the 3 new members of the school committee, I am committed to working with the schools, department heads, and city council to continue to push toward a better partnership. His comments on our schools were followed by applause, huge applause, as you all may remember, because we were all there. He then went in to say, I have great faith that with new energy and enthusiasm, we will return our educational system to one that is the best in the state, where students and teachers alike are reinvigorated and work side by side to ensure that our children are given the resources and experiences that they need to live successful lives. That, to me, was a promise and a pledge. And I promised the mayor, and many of you, if not all of you, that this school committee was invested in doing the same. And we still are. Do not judge us on the mistakes of the past. These people are working very hard. There has never been a school committee that has attended so many meetings and been called to do so many duties and been so disrespected. If we want to make this city, our city, the city that we love, if we want to make it better, if we want to make it great, we need to focus on the schools, and we need to do so honestly. Without picking at each other, without arguing, without setting each other up. We need to have honest conversations. We need to have honest dialogue. And we need to be honest in our dealings with each other. If we want to make this city great, we have to make our schools great, because great schools attract great people, more people coming in, and that leads to a great city or town. And we see that throughout this state and throughout the United States. So I beg you, all of you, and the community as well, to work with us honestly. And let's make this city and its schools the best that we can with what we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe the council, at this point in time, I know that procedurally, we have to open the public meeting. I know Councilman Lattiser, if you could, I just need a 5-minute recess for myself. So and that's probably unreasonable, I know. So I'm an unreasonable person to have a 5-minute recess, I get it.
Motion for a 5-minute recess?
And I appreciate that, Councilman Howe, thank you. Second, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The council stands in recess for 5 minutes.